situation at the border, you're saying, is not a disaster.
That is correct.
It's about time. The House Homeland Security Committee will officially move forward next week with articles of impeachment against Alejandro Mayorkas. This smarmy, corrupted human being needs to go. This and more on The Reading Room. Johnson, who is the Speaker of the House, posted this to give an update to the American people surrounding this crisis that we have going on here in the U.S. He writes here that 9 months have now passed since we sent our Secure the Border Act, H.R.2, to the Senate. Now, for those that don't know, the Democrats have the majority in the Senate. He continues on to say, as we have explained repeatedly, that bill contains the core legislative reforms that are necessary to actually compel the Biden administration to resolve the border catastrophe. The bill's provisions include transformative corrections such as the Remain in Mexico policy, the end of catch and release, meaningful reforms to the existing broken asylum and parole systems, and continued construction of a wall at our southern border. Since the day I became Speaker, I've assured our Senate colleagues the House would not accept any counterproposal if it would not actually solve the problems that have been created by the administration's subversive policies. The facts show that President Biden and his Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas have willfully ignored and actively undermined our nation's immigration laws. My office has documented at least 64 specific actions taken by his administration that effectively opened our border and instituted the current chaos. Rather than accept accountability, President Biden is now trying to blame Congress for what he himself intentionally created. The American people know better, and that's why public opinion polls show the country has overwhelmingly sided with us on this issue. When we return next week, by necessity, the House Homeland Security Committee will move forward with articles of impeachment against Secretary Mayorkas. A vote on the floor will be held as soon as possible thereafter. I can't believe that it has taken us this long to get to this point. In fact, I am bewildered at how this guy was even approved to become the head of Department of Homeland Security. Before we get started, I want people to understand what he is specifically responsible for here in the United States and why this is so serious right now. Alejandro Mayorkas is the head of the Department of Homeland Security, and his job is to ensure that all these different departments that are set up under him are protecting the Americans and keeping them safe, which means preventing illegal border crossings, preventing harmful things coming into this country to hurt Americans, as well as monitoring online for any type of cyber attacks or cyber destruction to kill our infrastructure. From the data that I've looked at, as well as these congressional hearings, the last 3 years, Mayorkas has been neglecting his duties and subverting these policies and instead focused on Americans and infringing upon their civil rights. I'll get into that in a second, but first, I want us to take a look at when he first came onto the scene to be accepted and approved for this position. Why we went ahead and made him the head is beyond me because the red flags were all there. The late California Democrat Senator Dianne Feinstein gave glowing remarks in support of Ali Mayorkas. Listen to what she had to say. Pay attention to the administrations that he served, as well as the positions he held as he climbed up this power ladder.
And thank you for the opportunity to introduce President Biden's nominee to be Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, who we all know as Ali. And thank you, Senator Peters and Portman, for your flexibility in accommodating my schedule this morning. It's really appreciated. I believe Ali is uniquely qualified to face the challenges before DHS. He offers a diverse background and a set of experiences in both the private and public sectors that are going to serve him well. Ali was born in Cuba, fled with his family to the United States in 1960. He attended the University of California at Berkeley, where he earned a bachelor's degree with distinction in 1981. He earned a law degree from Loyola Law School in 1985. I first met Ali in the 90s when I recommended him to President Clinton for the position of U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California.
So we have Dianne Feinstein to thank for introducing this POS into our government.
In that role, he tried numerous cases, from cybercrime to money laundering to immigration fraud. And given his stellar work and his own personal story as an immigrant from Cuba, President Obama nominated Mr. Mayorkas in 2009 to be Director of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. In that role, Ali administered our immigration laws while preserving our legacy as a nation of immigrants. Ali successfully implemented the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program known as DACA. This program played a critical role and remains critical for hundreds of thousands of young people in this country.
I want people to understand how these narratives get twisted. So at the time, as Dianne Feinstein is singing praises of Alejandro and his smug-looking face, realize that this all began with Obama in the destruction of this country. So for those that don't know, here's some facts about DACA. In June 2012, after admitting that he did not have the authority to do it, President Barack Obama signed an executive order of dubious constitutional and legal validity granting temporary legal status to illegal aliens who were brought into the United States by their parents when they were children. So this was the beginning of the idea of giving amnesty to all these illegal aliens. And what this DACA intended to do was it prevented the deportation of some undocumented immigrants who arrived in the United States as children and allows those immigrants to get work permits. Why this was so controversial and bad, as we're now seeing, is that DACA and the DREAM Act encouraged more illegal immigration, hence the reason why we're seeing this problem escalate even further. Thank you, Obama. The other issue is giving amnesty to lawbreakers. So these so-called dreamers have already broken the law by crossing the border illegally and remaining in the country without any documentation. In addition to that, there are statistics around dreamers committing work-related crimes such as Social Security fraud, forgery, perjury on I-9 employment forms. I mean, the list goes on and on. But of course, the Democrats spinning the narrative as if this was some genius plan that they implemented. Now look what we have.
After 4 years at USCIS, he was confirmed in 2013 to be Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, where he faced a broad array of challenges. He led the DHS response to the Ebola and Zika epidemics, oversaw the agency's effort to combat terrorism, and enhanced our border security. He also worked to facilitate trade and travel and enforced our immigration laws. Critically, given the threats we face today, he also oversaw and coordinated the government's efforts at cybersecurity. Mr. Chairman, the United States faces substantial security concerns and threats. And I just would like this committee to know that this senator has full confidence that Ali Mayorkas will provide positive leadership and strongly urge this committee to support his nomination.
I want people to understand that at the time, Republicans were vehemently against Mayorkas becoming the head of Department of Homeland Security. But due to the nature of the Senate being controlled by the Democrats, sadly, they were outnumbered. The real story of Mayorkas is that he has a history of scandal and has a repeated disregard for the law. We're seeing this play out real time now, so they can't blame the Republicans for creating these stories as a political thing. This is real. Mayorkas was the focus in 2015 of an extensive Inspector General report that brought light of improper actions as the director of USCIS. The IG's report concluded that Mayorkas overrode normal processes in order to provide political favors under the EB-5 visa program to well-connected Democrat stakeholders, including a company run by former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's brother that sought a visa for vice president of Huawei Technologies, yes, China, and also a company which Senator Harry Reid's son was involved with. Mayorkas' improper intervention was the deciding factor in granting visas to politically favored companies and people, and led to significant resentment among not only career staff, but senior managers and attorneys responsible for USCIS mission and programs. As the Inspector General bluntly put it, Mayorkas' intervention was corrosive and destabilizing. So although Dianne Feinstein painted this lovely picture, the reality was the abuse of authority to benefit politically connected Democrats was part of a pattern that started way before he joined the Obama administration. While he was the attorney for the Central District of California during the Clinton administration, despite his role as a law enforcement officer, he intervened with the White House to procure a commutation for a major and unrepentant cocaine trafficker whose father was a top Democrat donor. A 2002 report by the House Committee of Government Reform concluded that Mayorkas acted inappropriately in supporting the commutation. After Mayorkas' nomination hearing, Ted Cruz was vocal about warning that this is a bad decision if he is put in charge here by saying Mr. Mayorkas' disregard for the law will only grow if he's handed the reins to DHS. He has made no indication that he will oppose any aspect of the Biden administration's radical, unilateral, and unlawful immigration policies. Indeed, Mr. Mayorkas, in recent testimony before Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, refused to commit to securing the southern border with the construction of a border wall, asserting that he would explore his legal authority to discontinue the planned construction of the barrier despite funds having already been earmarked for the project. When you look back at this hearing, you realize that Mayorkas is a bullshit artist. Let's hear what he had to say during his nomination hearing in 2021.
In the 6 years under my chairmanship, this committee held dozens, I think well over 3 dozen hearings on the problems at the border. And that was really sparked by what happened in 2014 when President Obama declared a humanitarian crisis when we had the surge of unaccompanied children as well as family units come across the border illegally. One of the things I certainly did, and I didn't have time to blow these things up, but I started developing charts to kind of lay out the problem. What I'd like to do is go through a little bit, get some quick responses from you in terms of the history of this. I know Senator Feinstein credited you with the DACA program. I've been arguing, I think accurately, that the DACA program, as beneficial it is for people and addresses a particular problem, also was used as a catalyst by coyotes and created the surge that produced that 2014 humanitarian crisis where 137,000 people in total, unaccompanied children and family units crossed this border illegally, and we had to deal with that. And the Obama administration recognized that, and you were Deputy Secretary at that point in time. Just quick answer these questions. In reaction to that, it is true that the Obama administration built the facility in McAllen, Texas, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the same facility that has the chain link fences that people on the other side of the aisle have referred to as putting children in cages, correct?
Yes, sir.
You started that detention process because you recognize this is a problem. So you started detaining those families and those unaccompanied children, correct?
Senator, the detention establishment in Immigration and Customs Enforcement existed long before I became deputy.
But you continued. You detained individuals, correct? Correct?
We detained individuals as part of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement operation.
Precisely.
Yes.
You also separated children from the adults that they arrived here, correct? There were children separated from parents back in 2014, correct? Just yes or no?
Senator Johnson, when I was the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, I explicitly rejected the proposal to separate families.
But it occurred, correct?
Senator, I can't speak
Okay.
to that, and I would look forward.
Regardless, the enforcement actions the Obama administration took actually had an impact. We went from 137,000 down to 80,000 in 2015, but then a court reinterpreted the Flores decision and included accompanied children for those same protections. And you can take a look at the result. It took a little while for people to realize how they could exploit that problem, to the point in 2019 we had 608,000 people arriving and coming to this country illegally, basically apprehended and then released and dispersed through this country. That was a real problem. And this administration addressed it with the MPP program, different agreements with Central America, and we dramatically saw a decrease in the amount of people coming in here, risking their lives in a very dangerous journey. We saw a dramatic decrease well before COVID. Another chart we have is average daily entries, illegal entries per month. You can see we hit a peak in May of 2019. Again, this is when the administration, this current administration, started implementing solutions to the problem. And by and large, we dramatically decreased that. What's been happening over the last few months is we've had a dramatic increase now in terms of single adults coming here. And we see a 9,000-person caravan coming from Honduras. And they're very open in terms of why they're doing it, because President-elect Biden has stated in the debates that we're not going to deport anybody in the first 100 days, so they're going to take advantage of that opportunity. So I guess my questions for you is, Secretary Johnson, who you served under, said that 1,000 people per day was a bad day. We have been consistently over 2,000 a day for the last number of years, over 4,000 a day in March 2019. Right now we're back over 2,000 per day. Do you consider that a problem? What is going to be a bad day if you're Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security of illegal entry?
Senator Johnson, I've had the privilege of addressing these issues with you before, when I was served as the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, and candidly, of course, several weeks ago when I became the nominee to be the next Secretary of Homeland Security. I look forward to studying the data with you and actually being open and transparent with you. And
okay,
providing
but again, what will 1,000 a day be a bad day, or is 2,000 acceptable? Is 3,000 acceptable? What's going to be a bad day on your watch?
Senator,
just pick a number.
Senator, I look forward to.
Okay, I don't have time for. Okay, so next question. Do you believe coming into this country illegally for economic improvement, is that a valid asylum claim?
Senator, the asylum laws are well established, and they provide that an individual who's fleeing persecution by reason of his or her member in a particular social group is deserving of protection.
Okay, but coming here for economic gain is not a valid asylum claim. Would you agree with that?
Senator, I believe I articulated the legal theory,
okay. Will you commit to provide this senator, this committee, the type of data, at least the data we got, so I can continue to monitor what's happening at the border? So I have full information so we can really see what's happening based on whatever policies you implement.
Yes, I committed to you that I would do so when we last spoke, and I commit to you now.
Do you also commit to enforcing our current immigration laws?
I do.
Fully enforcing them. Okay, just real quick, I know Senator Portman did a pretty good job of talking about the EB-5 and the Office of Inspector General report. I would ask this committee, I received a letter from Senator Grassley with about 138 pages of documentation. I'd ask that be entered in the record. I'd also ask that the report by the Office of Inspector General be entered in the record. And I just have a couple quick questions. The main problem, and I'm assuming you got that letter from Senator Grassley dated January 15, 2021?
Yes, Senator.
Have you responded to that?
I'm about to, Senator.
I think, again, there's a lot of detail in here. A lot of your testimony was contradicted by what you've done. You said you're supportive of transparent and being forthright with this committee. Senator Grassley, in a letter, is one of the attachments, August 23, 2013, his main issue in writing the letter to you is you have not been forthright. You have not answered questions dating back to his oversight letters of 2013. But one of the points he makes in this August 23, 2013 letter is the questions for the record response is in direct contradiction of your hearing testimony goes on to say, this contradicted what you had previously told my staff, which was you were never involved in individual cases. So again, I would just ask the members of this committee in evaluating this nomination to seriously take a look at this letter from Senator Grassley with his exhibits that I've now entered into the record. There's some pretty troubling issues raised by Senator Grassley. I don't know that you want to quick respond to that. I'm out of time.
I would very much like to, if I may, Senator and Mr. Chairman, may I respond to that? I became involved in a lot of cases because, as I said, the work of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is casework. And I did my job, and I learned of problems, and I fixed them. As a matter of fact, one of the areas in which I became very involved is in the area of international adoptions. And I learned of that area, and I learned of the problems that afflicted it, because Senator Grassley brought a case to my attention involving an international adoption that had become stuck in a bureaucratic nightmare. And I jumped in, and I learned about what was going on in our international adoption system at the request of Senator Grassley. And I learned a lot from becoming involved in that case. And then Senator Grassley's concerns were echoed by Senator Landrieu, who called me one day and said that we are stuck in moving orphan children in Guatemala to their welcoming homes and families in the United States. And I created a task force to look into that and to tackle it. And I traveled to Guatemala 3 times to see what I could do with government leaders in that country to work through the bureaucratic nightmare that was causing tremendous suffering on the behalf of children who were looking for homes, and a humble, faithful American families that had opened their homes and their families to those children that didn't have anything. And I became involved in those cases, and I fixed that problem. And the international adoptions from Guatemala began to move. And I brought justice to the case that Senator Grassley presented to me. And I did so based on the facts and the law and nothing more. And I keep to this day the letter of thanks from Senator Grassley for my involvement in that case. I remember with great pride my attendance at an affair with Senator Grassley and Senator Landrieu to celebrate the humble and faithful American families that opened their homes to children in need. And I have to this day a photograph of an orphan child running through an airport with a big smile on his face because he's about to be embraced by his American family that has opened their home to him. And that is not the case of the rich and the powerful. That is the case of the poor and the disenfranchised. I got involved in a lot of cases, and I did right by the cases I got involved in, and the Inspector General did not take issue with the disposition of the cases in which I became involved, because I studied the law and I followed the facts, and that is my North Star, and it always has been. And any suggestion to the contrary is incorrect.
Could it be that this man is involved in one of the largest human trafficking operations that ever existed in this country?
Your current system has 85,000 kids they can't find. What in the world? It's the New York Times. It's not Fox News. And we're sitting here talking about a fiction of saying there's an infant rolling through somewhere outside of Eagle Pass right now, begging to claim asylum. The infant is not doing that. This is absurd. You know it's absurd. We have language here put forward in good faith, trying to figure out how to stop what I see in this chart behind me, where unaccompanied children are spiking through the roof, have been doing so since Democrats have been in charge of the administration. The only blip is when you had a Republican in charge. You had kids on top of train cars getting abused by cartels. You got numbers spiking through the roof since President Biden has been in office. And all we want to simply do is say we want to get them home to their families. We want to get them to a place where they can go to a port of entry so we can take care of them. And we're being traded by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle with where are the 1,000 that aren't being reunified? Well, go find the 85,000 that we don't even know where the hell they are under the Biden administration. I yield back.
Process. Let me run through just some very quick questions for you. I've got quite a few to be able to run through, but a lot of these are just getting some things out of the way. Will you protect the rights of whistleblowers, access to the Inspector General, in cooperation with this committee if you're the Secretary of Homeland Security?
Yes, I always have and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Do you see your role, and this is a perspective issue, do you see your role as the leader of DHS as the leader of a law enforcement agency or a law interpretation or reinterpretation agency?
The Department of Homeland Security is charged with enforcing the laws that Congress passes.
Thank you. If there's someone in the administration that pushes you, encourages you to not enforce the law or to ignore the law as the Secretary of Homeland Security, what would be your response to them?
I am an officer of the court. I always have been.
Ms. Pearlstein, in 2019 on a New York Public Radio podcast, you were asked what you took away from a congressional hearing on impeachment standards. Your response was as follows.
So this is an exchange that came out of and really belonged in the panel in which the constitutional law professors were appearing. And there, the professors were reasonably uniform, right, in recognizing that it doesn't have to be a crime, that is to say an impeachable offense, doesn't have to be a crime as currently embodied in the federal criminal code as enacted by Congress. The existing criminal laws didn't exist when the framers wrote the Constitution, and indeed, crimes as such weren't what the framers had in mind when they put impeachment into the Constitution. What they were thinking about with the impeachment remedy were serious offenses against the public trust. That is, certain things that only the president and other senior officials could do that abused their authority. In other words, the idea of abuse of power is sort of the death.
Do you still stand by those words? Yes, just a yes or no quick question.
It is absolutely the case. The Congress doesn't have to show a violation of Title 18 of the U.S. Code. It has to show that there was a high crime or misdemeanor.
Reclaiming my time, I think the words that are very interesting to me is serious offenses against the public trust. Ms. Nobles, Ms. Dunn, do you think that our open border policies, which have allowed fentanyl to pour into this country, 1.8 million gotaways, unknown gotaways, is an offense against the public trust of this country?
Yes, definitely.
Ms. Dunn? Yes. Ms. Nobles, the committee has been focused, well, first, before I ask your question, one of the things that was very interesting in your opening statement, Ms. Pearlstein, was about the power of separation, the separation of powers. And you talk about Congress having the remedy to make laws to fix the immigration issue and the border issue. But see, we passed a law that says shall detain. Mr. Mayorkas has basically completely reversed that. So you're right, we could pass more laws. In fact, we tried. We passed H.R. 2, but it won't pass the Senate because they refused to take it up. But yes, we have the power to pass more laws. They're not even following the laws that are already written. And that, from my standpoint, is basically a refusal to understand the separation of powers, that we write the laws and they enforce them. But the Secretary doesn't seem to care about that, nor does he seem to care about the 4 court orders, which have told him he's doing that and said cease and desist with these policies that are absolutely subverting the law, and he refused to follow those court orders. Ms. Nobles, the committee has been focused on the Biden administration's refusal to secure our southwest border and vet alien arrivals. A report from the House Judiciary Committee pointed out multiple vetting failures with your daughter's killer. Its report shows that your daughter's murderer was arrested for association with the MS-13 well before he came to the United States, something the United States officials verified easily after the murder occurred. The The report also noted that the alien was released after he was arrested for murder. Do you think that Secretary Mayorkas has done an adequate job of vetting illegal aliens coming across our southern border?
No. And may I say that it took the local detectives to find out that he was an MS-13 gang member. Homeland Security and Department of Health and Human Services did not know that until after he killed my daughter. And then they try to write it in there after the fact, but it was already let out that they failed to know that he was an MS-13 gang member.
Ms. Dunn, do you believe Secretary Mayorkas genuinely cares about the well-being and safety of U.S. citizens like your daughter, considering that his actions are directly responsible for aggravating and fueling the ongoing fentanyl crisis?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
You've heard the statement before, and you and I have talked about it before. Would you recommend that ICE be defunded?
No.
Does ICE need actually additional support?
Senator, there I will have to study the condition of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, how efficiently and effectively it is using its resources, and how it is best serving the American public. That requires my study.
We'll look forward to getting a chance to get a follow-up on that study. Would you recommend any of the physical barriers along our southern border be dismantled or removed?
Senator, I haven't looked at that specific question. I will share with you the fact that I agree with the approach that then Senator McCain, an American hero in my family and in this country, that Senator McCain took to the border, which is it's not a monolithic challenge, the border. The border is varied depending on the geography, depending on the specific venue, and depending on the conduct of individuals around it. And we don't need, nor should we have, a monolithic answer to that varied and diverse challenge.
Right. I would assume that it's 2,000-mile long border. We've got many areas that are mountainous, open desert areas. That I would fully agree. Don't need a physical barrier. We have lots of sight lines there. We can do it with other technology, other enforcement means on that. Is there any area of the border that you would see now that still needs additional repair for physical barriers, additional increase in technology, or would need an expansion of physical barriers?
Senator, I look forward to studying that because I am well aware of the challenges that the border presents. I am very well aware of the fact, as Senator Johnson alluded to, that traffickers are seeking to exploit the border, and not only to move people across it illegally, but to move contraband, to move fentanyl. The narco traffickers have sought to exploit the current challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I look forward to studying the border to make sure that those challenges are repelled.
The border agents that I've spoken to there along the border tell me of two things on physical barriers. One is it slows people down so they're able to interdict as they're trying to climb the wall, get around the wall, get under the wall. They're able to get access to those individuals and be able to interdict faster in that sense. So it becomes a deterrent. It also pushes people towards the point of entry where they can manage those families and individuals a lot easier in that sense, in a more reasonable environment rather than being in a very remote area. So I look forward to that ongoing conversation. You and Senator Johnson had an interchange back and forth on this very straightforward question. Is economic opportunity a valid reason for asylum? You quoted the asylum statute on that, but I guess the yes or no question on that is economic opportunity doesn't seem to be in the statute as a valid reason for asylum. So I guess the question I have for you still is economic opportunity a reason that should be added to it? It's not there. Do you believe it's there?
Senator, I'm a lawyer by profession, so I take a look at the laws and I enforce them as both a lawyer and as a law enforcement officer for nearly 20 years of my career. When one speaks of economic opportunity, what does one mean? Just generally an opportunity to make a better living? If that is what you are referring to, that my understanding is that that does not a legitimate asylum claim make.
And that's our understanding of the law as well. And it seems a pretty plain reading of it that if someone is coming to increase their economic opportunity, obviously almost any country in the world, any city you live in the world, there's improved opportunities in the United States, and we're grateful for that in the United States. But just saying, hey, you don't have a lot of economic opportunities where you live doesn't mean you open up our borders for asylum claims or to say we're going to somehow release you into the United States and debate it. There's been an ongoing conversation about how to be able to manage that and how to be able to do it. Let me ask you a difficult question that's going to be hard to be able to interpret at this point because you haven't faced it yet, but pretty likely will in the days ahead. As the leader of DHS, it's pretty likely you're going to have thousands of people coming across the border in a migrant caravan from Honduras pretty rapidly. What message would you want to give to those folks right now that are traveling north in that migrant caravan to be able to send a message to them that if you're confirmed as the Secretary of Homeland Security, this is the message they need to hear about when they arrive in the United States?
Senator, let me say at the outset that this is not the first caravan that has apparently approached the border over the last 4 years or
it's not.
Over the last 12 years. The phenomenon of a caravan is something that we have confronted in the Department of Homeland Security for many years. I think President-elect Biden and people who will be joining his incoming administration have spoken about the fact that there is a commitment to follow our asylum laws, to enforce our asylum laws, and that means to provide humanitarian relief for those individuals who qualify for it under the law. That cannot be accomplished with just the flick of a switch and turned on day one, that it will take time to build the infrastructure and capacity so that we can enforce our laws as Congress intended. And that would be the message I would send.
So because you paid $7,000, then it's okay if we pay something.
I don't care if this is for America. I don't care.
So you're because you paid $7,000.
Yeah.
It's okay that Americans have to pay some money too.
Yeah, because America is my dream. If America doesn't want me, I'm here for America. Yeah, because I respect America. I respect American rules, everything. Okay. Yeah.
But you broke the rules coming in though. Right?
No,
like this isn't legal. If it were, then you wouldn't be sitting out here, right? You know, I mean, you know that. You guys know that.
Yeah.
So you're saying you respect our rules, but you didn't follow the rules to get in.
No, look.
I mean, you know.
I know. I have no idea how to get visa to travel to America.
This was your option in your.
It's first mistake.
First mistake. First mistake.
Yeah.
All right. No more mistakes.
First and last mistake.
First and last.
First and last.
Okay.
Yeah. Mexico City to Sonata, and we're here.
So why didn't you do it legally? Why didn't you do the CBP one, the app, or go to a port?
Actually, I don't have any idea.
You don't know?
Yeah,
you just said I'm going to do this?
Actually, I do this. That's it. Yeah.
Did you know there's a more legal way to do this?
No.
No?
First, I'm gonna to New York City to my friend to help me for something, and I will buy a new bicycle, and I will work Uber.
How are you gonna buy a bicycle? What money?
I have my money. I have my credit card.
Okay, so you didn't get robbed over in Mexico? You have some stuff? You didn't get taken?
No, just I'm using just credit card.
How long was your journey, and then how much money?
$7,000.
$7,000.
Yeah.
Okay, and you had that money? You had $7,000?
My money, because actually I was a streamer in Morocco.
A streamer?
Gamer, yeah.
Okay.
But before coming here, I deleted all my video on YouTube and Facebook.
Okay.
Let me come back to the subject of immigration policy a little bit more broadly. And speaking of the president-elect's plans, he has said that he intends to propose, as early as his first day in office, so tomorrow, a plan for amnesty to up to 11 million illegal immigrants. Now, I have to tell you, I have concerns about that, especially in this time of severe economic distress that has fallen disproportionately on working-class Americans. Give me a sense of do you support a mass amnesty? 11 million is a very, very large number. Do you support mass amnesty on that scale? Give me a sense of your thinking on this.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to that important issue, Senator Hawley. President-elect Biden has committed to presenting Congress on day one with an immigration reform bill that once and for all fixes, I think, what we all can agree is a broken immigration system. And he has spoken of the need for a path to citizenship for the individuals who have been in this country for many years, who have contributed to our communities and to this nation's economic prosperity. I would be privileged to work with Congress to pass immigration reform legislation that provides that path and provides a permanent solution to what is clearly a broken system.
Are you worried at all, Mr. Mayorkas, that an amnesty on that scale, such as envisioned by the president-elect, will become itself a pull factor? Senator Scott mentioned the recent migrant caravan from Honduras headed towards the United States that appears to have been disrupted in Guatemala. But are you concerned? I'm concerned about the pull factor here, as well as the policy, again, implications, particularly as it relates to working Americans. But are you concerned about a pull factor and an amnesty of that scale?
Senator Hawley, I separately, if I may, Senator Hawley, let me speak to the push factor, because I don't think its severity can be overstated. And I say this because President-elect Biden has articulated an ambitious and visionary plan for addressing the root causes of irregular migration. When loving parents are willing to send their young child alone to traverse Mexico to reach the dangerous southern border between the United States and Mexico because of the acute violence and severe poverty and the fear of persecution, I think we need to address the push factor as the gravest challenge to irregular migration. And therefore, the investment in countries where so many people are fleeing, the investments in building a refugee program in the Western Hemisphere and in the region, so that humanitarian relief is provided and our border is not the first place at which those needs are confronted, I think is a vital and underlying solution to the problem we confront.
More questions, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief. I want to ask you about the migrant protection protocols, and then I want to ask you about human trafficking. But just quickly, Mr. Mayorkas, on the migrant protection protocols, this is, as you know, the Trump administration's policy of processing migrants in Mexico, helping to restore a safe and orderly immigration process while deterring those dangerous crossings that you were just talking about. Do you anticipate continuing to implement the migration protection protocols, or will you end them?
Senator Hawley, I think you were cut off midstream in your final question, but I think I understand your question, which is, would I continue with the Migration Protection Protocols, or MPP, as the acronym is known? President-elect Biden has spoken of his commitment to end the Migration Protection Protocols, and I would execute on that commitment should I have the privilege of serving as the Secretary.
Okay, last question, Mr. Chairman. Human trafficking, Mr. Mayorkas. Last October, the department launched a new integrated operations system, a center rather for countering human trafficking led by ICE. They've had considerable success, but there is a tremendous amount of work left to do. As Secretary, if confirmed, would you continue to prioritize combating human trafficking and supporting ICE and the department as a whole in its battle against this modern day form of slavery?
I would, Senator. I would look forward to working with you in that regard, and I can share with you that for 12 years as a federal prosecutor, I focused considerable energy and effort on combating human trafficking and prosecuting the perpetrators of it.
Obviously, you can see that this man did not hold any of the promises that he made that day when he was bullshitting the U.S. government. So the question is, what has he been doing over the last 3 years? Well, in my next video, I'm going to go into detail about the part that he played now in this censorship industrial complex. Those that follow me on the Royal Grift, is it any surprise that it's this man's department that's holding back the information on Harry's visa? There's a lot more to this story, folks.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I could just conclude, Mr. Chairman, here's the last thing I'll say on this, Mr. Secretary. We have 2 million unauthorized migrants who crossed the border last year during the calendar year. We have 245,390 illegal crossings just this year in the Rio Grande Valley. And your priority is setting up a board and hiring someone who has gone to TikTok to talk about stopping speech she doesn't like, who has mocked voters, supporters of the last president. That has been your priority. To say that your priorities are misplaced, I think, is a dramatic understatement. And the time has come, I think, Mr. Secretary, for you to resign. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Not only should he resign, but he should be prosecuted and sent to jail, along with the other crooked leaders that participated doing this to the Americans. I definitely am going to continue to keep following this particular situation closely. You don't want to miss it, so please don't forget to subscribe and like this video so you can be notified of more informative videos such as this. As I've said this before, this is a learning journey for me, and I've set this channel up to invite anyone who wants to come along to help get to a semblance of truth and reality. I believe that it is the responsibility of each of us to take ownership of our freedoms. The more informed we are, the better we can make choices instead of having the government do it for us. It's not going to be easy, but I have faith that we will be able to turn this ship around. Remember, we are the majority. They need us more than we need them. Stand tall and do not be afraid to use your voice. In repeating the words of Ben Franklin, any society that would give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both. Remember those words when you see the manipulation of these leaders forcing you to compromise. Do not be fooled, otherwise you will be enslaved. The choice is yours while you still have it. Chew on that, and I'll catch you later.